the first day of my 10-day break. It was raining quite a bit this morning, but then it cleared up enough that I was able to get out and grind the I welded up and then ground smooth the little guard stays. We'll see them there. And that fits pretty well. Same on this side, and I've been filing and hammering and sanding the weld in the middle. I'm not good enough to get the weld to completely disappear, but I'm getting close. It's getting better, and I hammered the sides again to try and get them smooth. They're still a little bit lumpy. They look way better than they are on film. I think things always do. But it's not too bad. It's getting pretty good now. And tomorrow I want to make the rear stays. So these are the little brackets I've got. I'm reusing the ones I've already made. Might as well just make as much use of what I've already got. So that will make those rear brackets. Same sort of deal where I'm just going to flatten the end of the tube and then bend it and weld it onto the bracket. And I think that should work pretty well. And just a really quick update on the Velo for the people who were worried that I had a British bike that wasn't leaking oil. It is still leaking oil. It is leaking now from, I think it's from the sump gasket. So it was just a few drips. I have tightened it up. Maybe that's now stopped it. And that will have been because, of course, I had to disturb it to take the sump off to fix the front oil seal. So the front oil seal is not leaking, and I'm hoping the oil pan, once I've run it a few times and tightened it up, should be good. But since it was raining, couldn't go out and do any test riding today. Like I said, I've got quite a few days off, so hopefully there'll be better weather later in the week. Yeah, the guards definitely look better being the right size. And I still have no idea how it took me so long to realise that's what was wrong. It's Saturday today. It's just started raining. I'm in all my motorbike gear. I've been over the neighbours' farm just practising. It just started raining just as I came back, so everything's a bit wet. Bike got up to a good solid temperature. I need to adjust the carb because I think when it gets hot it starts getting a bit stuttery. I also think I might need to adjust the carb, the clutch. Just doesn't feel quite right. I also need to practice my hill starts, and by hills I mean the little slope coming out of our driveway, even going across the driveway. Just getting the hang of how many revs to give it, and you know, how to release the clutch, and just getting used to things like if you feel like you're going to fall off, putting your feet down. It's just like a natural reaction, but it seems like it's better if you don't. You just give it a bit more speed and it'll straighten up. All really simple, obvious stuff, I imagine, for people who know anything about bikes, but I don't, so I'm learning. The gear change is great. It's really easy. I did accidentally go from second to third at one point, but because I was going very slowly, obviously, going into first, I wanted to go into first, accidentally went to the third, and it just sort of stalled it. But seems good. I've got the cardboard under there to see if there's any drips. I don't think there are. So I might, while it's still hot, I might just tweak that carburetor just a little bit. Oh, I took my jacket off. These things are really heavy. But I figured if I was going to get something, I might as well get something good, even if it's only a little 200cc little bike. I figure if you fall off when you hit the road doesn't really care if it was a 600 or 1000 or 200cc. Good thing with this is you can't go too fast, of course. But it's definitely hot. Let's see how it starts. doesn't sound, still not quite right. Not sure why. Maybe I need to fiddle with the position of the needle. The oil pressure's good. The lamps all work. So far, I think there was a drop of water from the coolant. So far, no oil. So that's good. I suppose I should check it's still got oil in it, but I'm pretty sure it does. It's gone sunny again, which is good because I had to do a bit more grinding outside. This is still leak free. Can't even see any drips forming. I did have my little GPS on there, but the battery went flat as soon as I was over the road. So I've still got no idea how accurate the speedo is. On the other bike I did restore a similar gauge, but it's not from a Velo set, so I'm assuming this is the original gauge, and it's a Smith's 1600 turn per mile. And the other gauge I've got is a 1000 turn per mile, which I think is what they use in, I can't remember if it's Austin 7s or Morris 8s, 1930s vintage car anyway. And I'd worked out that the 1000 turn per mile will actually read the correct value in kilometers per hour. 1000 turns times 1.6 would give you the 1600, which is giving you the miles per hour. So if that one's not accurate and it's a problem, I will swap it over for the other one. But I think I could manually set the odometer so it's got the same reading, which would be good. But the main thing is the front guards are done mostly. Well, they don't need redoing. They probably still need some smoothing off and some twisting and bits and pieces. But I've done the rear stays. I did the little mounting bolt. This goes down into a little, there's a shoulder machined in this pin, so this locks on that, so it can't move backwards and forwards. I may make up like a thin jam nut to go in there as well, so you can tighten this up and then lock that jam nut so there's no way it can come undone. These rear stays needed a very slight bend in them just to line up, but they line up really well at the back. Guards are in place. I still need to figure out how far round I want them to go, because at the moment they can slide backwards and forwards. That's why there are clamps. Without the clamps they just fall off. They slide off. So I need to figure out how high up I want the rear of them, which determines how far forward the front comes. It's going to be somewhere around there. Maybe a little bit lower, because you have to think you don't want water and stuff flicking up. And I made the welds sort of on this bit fairly nice. Well, I made welds and then I ground them so they were fairly nice. I did it with MIG, and then I actually went back with the TIG to make them, to sort of smooth them off, and that worked really well. The TIG actually worked nicely to build them up and then grind them back. So those are quite nice. I may still build up just in that corner. I sort of welded it up and then ground it off, and I ground a bit too far so it went a bit flat. So I might build up just inside that corner. Mainly because you can sort of see these. Although once the inside of this is painted black, and these are painted black, you're not going to notice that. So it probably doesn't matter. But I think those have come out pretty well. It just took me an awful lot of attempts and a lot of time and a lot of effort. But probably worth it. It's really hard. They never look quite right. So the radius is exactly right. I've measured it, and the radius of the guards is correct and they're in the correct position, that everything is concentric. But unless you're standing way back and look at it directly from the side, you don't see that, because the angle's always changing. And of course the other problem on the front is that positive camber. I did try using my laser level to get these lined up so they're straight, and in the end it's like, no, it's not going to work. Just eyeball it and tacked it and then checked it, and they're not too bad. If you look at pictures of original ones, even cars that have been for sale recently, they're often quite wonky. And of course the first thing that'll happen is somebody comes and leans on that or sits on it and they're going to go all over the place. But I think I'm pretty pleased with how those have come out. So the next thing to do, maybe tomorrow is Sunday and everything is shut. I think in New Zealand there are 2 days of the year where pretty much absolutely everything is shut. It's Easter Sunday and Christmas Day. I think maybe restaurants are allowed to open. Pubs are, I think, if they're serving food. There's weird rules around it. Garden centres often open as well, because the fine they get for opening is less than the amount of money they would lose for not opening. It's all a bit daft. So I might make the little brackets that mount these diagonal stays. They're going to have to go up here somewhere. And I did realise that it works quite well. The angle that these are going to be at pretty much matches the angle of the spider in the headlamp. So the spider is this reflector in the middle. This is one of the reasons you can't use LED bulbs in these headlamps easily. There's not enough room. They're not long enough. Or the bulbs are too long and they won't fit behind that. In New Zealand you can't anyway, unless the housing has been designed for LEDs. It explicitly says you cannot use LED headlamps. Other bulbs are fine, just not the headlamps. But the spider is this bit in the middle. It's got these three arms. These will actually quite nicely match the angle of the spider. I just thought that was cool. It's just a complete coincidence. But I need to figure out how I'm going to attach them up here. I'll probably, because it was not, I don't think they did it at the factory. I think they did it afterwards when people were racing them. So I might actually make it so there's a little tab that gets bolted on, because also then it's easy to fix. So I mean, if I was doing it after the fact, that's kind of how I would do it. I'd just make a little bracket, drill some holes and bolt it on. So I think I'll do that. And those are there to help stop the fronts flapping around, because there is a bit of overhang here. You can see these still do have a little bit of twist, but once they're bolted on here, so they're not 100% finished, I still need to drill the holes to mount these, and the holes and the brackets need to be filed square because I'm going to use coach bolts with the little square heads, and I'm going to use nylock type nuts on the inside when I do the final assembly. So you can see this has got a little bit of a twist in it, but once that's all bolted down, I think they'll be reasonably rigid, which is good. So I still need to do it all over again for the back, but I think once I've done those guard stays, the next thing I will do is the door skins. I think it'd just be really nice to get the body panels finished, and then it'll be the bonnet. I need to sort out what I'm going to do for the hinges. You can see these steel mock-ups just rusted. They're just mild steel. These would be pretty hard to paint, so I think I don't want to use brass on a brass rod, because similar metals, they would bind up. So I think stainless steel might be the thing to use. Nickel silver would be the best thing, but no idea where you'd get that. So I think that's it for today. Today is Sunday. my plan for today is drill the holes and get the bolts actually mounted for this, because then I can actually bolt these on, and bolting them on will make it easier to finish some of the hammering on this because it'll hold them. That's the plan anyway. And I'll also look at doing those diagonals. I figured for the brackets on the end, because my adjustment is down one end on the little turnbuckle there, to tension them, all I need on the other end is a flat tab welded on. I'll see if I can find some stainless steel, and I think I can bronze, like TIG bronze weld those together. I'm not sure. I've got some scraps. I'll do some tests. And then I just make a little metal tab on the end and just a bolt straight through. But I've been thinking about the bike and why the clutch isn't right. The reason it's not right is because I never set the eccentric bolt, which is down in there, which you probably can't see very well. You can see the clutch lever moves when I pull the handle, and that's pivoting on a there's a bolt. What can I demonstrate it with? Don't have any chalks over there, but there is if you've got the clutch here, there's a pin that goes all the way through, and that's what actuates the clutch mechanism. That lever comes up like this and pushes on this. And the reason mine wasn't working is because the pivot for this is on an eccentric bolt, and what that does is effectively moves the lever in and out. And what I've found on mine, I never actually set that, and there's actually a little tool that you can use. You measure it to get the right sort of pull on the clutch, and I forgot to do that. So the reason my clutch is not felt right is because that adjustment was wrong, and when you pulled the clutch on, it was actually hitting the frame. It's still doing it now, and it bends the frame just a little bit. And that was my problem, was to get the clutch fully pulled in, the lever was hitting the frame, so it was the springiness of the frame of it trying to push the frame out of the way that made the clutch pull really hard. So that eccentric bolt has a lock nut on one end, and this stuff is really hard to get to when it's in the bike. The only way I was able to do it, and I've lost the spanner somewhere, there it is. There is a locking bolt, a locking nut rather, for what we can see, but up in here, this one up here. The only way I could get a spanner on it is to use this little thing, which is, I'm not even sure where I got this from, but it's brilliant. It is all imperial sizes. Kind of looks like a connecting rod. It says made in England, but there's no marks on it. But I was able to get that onto that lock nut and loosen it, which then lets you turn the eccentric bolt. But again, getting to that is really hard. You can't get a spanner on it. So I've made up this steel bar. It's just mild steel. It's fairly early in the morning, so there's a lot of sun. And I sort of ground a flat tip on the end with a sort of angle on it, and I can get that onto the nut like that and tap it with a hammer to move it round. And I've been slowly adjusting it until it doesn't hit the frame. And I think there's still a bit more adjustment. Obviously it'll go round and round and round, so I've just been doing it in sort of flats at the moment, trying to find out where the best position is, and I'm getting pretty close. And so now the clutch is fully disengaging, and you have to be really careful testing this, because obviously I start the bike to test it, and I accidentally let go of the clutch when it was in gear, and the bike took off that way, not very far luckily. It came off its stand, and then promptly stalled, luckily. And I caught the bike before it fell over, but all the tools and everything went flying. But that's why the clutch didn't feel right, and that's why that adjustment is important. So you can see there, it still just hits the frame. But I'll keep tapping it round, playing with it, and hopefully I can get it a little bit better. It's Sunday, and once again you find me in the middle of a giant mess. I think I mentioned I did finish adjusting the clutch. I re-lubed all of the cables. It's much better now. I did do a little bit of practice out on the verge in front of our house, where as it comes up to the driveway it's actually quite steep. Just practicing hill starts and taking off smoothly. I think I'm going to practice that a bit more. It's actually quite tricky. The bike isn't hugely powerful, of course, so you do have to give it quite a few revs to get it to climb the hill. But I then came in and I have drilled the guard mounting bolts, and as you can see I've got some bolts fitted. If you look very closely you'll see they're not sitting down flat at the moment, but there's a good reason for that, which I will explain. I really want dome head bolts for this, coach type bolts with no slots. The problem is the only ones I've been able to find in imperial sizes are these Whitworth ones that I got. So I got a bunch of these, and I got sort of aerotight style nuts. These are sort of shake-proof nuts to go with them. But it turns out these aren't really very good. Some of them seem to have nicks in the edges of them, and also the threads don't go all the way down. So I would need to figure out a way to hold these so I can run a tap down them, which a die down them rather, to extend the thread. Otherwise I would need to pack them out on the inside, which isn't what I want. Trying to make something to hold these without crushing the edges would be quite tricky. They're just also not very good quality. So I'm going to do something I am not proud of, but it's probably the practical solution, and I'm going to use metric bolts for that. It's probably the only place there's metric on the car. But the reason for doing that is I can get quite nice dome head carriage bolts locally easily. It's dead easy to get M8 locking hardware, so I could get Nylox or aerotight nuts or whatever. Probably the aerotight ones. The Nylox look a little bit too modern, and you will see those ones at least. I could even just use standard nuts and bolts and lock washers. They do, the brand is Bemrick. Bemrick, is that right? Bremmick, that's it. So on the top there is a B and an M for metric. So if anybody asks, the BM stands for British made. That's how I'm going to get away with it. So I mean, the good thing is an 8mm nut actually fits an Imperial BSW size spanner. They're so close to the 5/16, the same spanners will work. So that's the main reason I don't normally use them, because then you need a whole different set of spanners. But I think we'll get away with it for that one. The reason they're sitting up like that is because, of course, there's the square head, which you need, because you need to pop this in and have it not spin. And I do have a file, a square file, which is almost exactly the right width for these M8 bolts, which is good. The problem is getting that file in an 8mm hole isn't easy. It does go in, but only just the tip. So I need to start filing out the corners, and the only other square or triangular files I've got are these little tiny needle files, and that would take forever. It's not so bad through the sheet metal, but through the 1/4" steel bracket, it's a bit harder. So I need to get another file, probably like a rat tail triangular file, so I can get in there, start filing out the corners, and then I can get this one through all the way. Like I say, it's perfectly sized. It's slightly bigger than the biggest area, no, biggest width, I guess, on this. So that's what I'll need to do. But those are bolted in. It's like I say, it's sitting up on the shanks, and they look okay. The other thing I did is had a look at a lot of period photos and photos of original cars. It turns out so many of the original cars have had bodies rebuilt in the past. There's not a lot of originality left in a lot of them, I think, which isn't surprising. They were race cars, they were old cars. Just the nature of the construction means they were kind of flimsy, I guess. But guards are all different styles. There's lots of different sorts of shapes. The length of them seems different as well. So I started off trying to figure out how far down they should go. I realized that was the wrong way to look at it. Instead, I looked at pictures to figure out how far forward they come. And basically, it's pretty consistent. If you look at them all, it's past the front of the rim, but inside the front of the tyre. So somewhere in this region should line up with the front. And that's what I've done here. And that looks pretty good. There is one car, I can't remember the number of it, where this is way back here and it just looks wrong. So looking at all the pictures, where that ends doesn't seem to matter so much, but where this begins is important. And with these bolted on, they're reasonably firm. I mean, they're still going to rattle around, but that's actually the chassis flexing a lot of it. I don't know if you can see that, but you know, it's an unboxed chassis, so it is flexible. That's how they work. I haven't tried undoing the bolt there and undoing the lock bolt there, the nut there and the bolt there, to see if you can remove these without taking them off the stays, which is what they would have done for racing. But I've decided I'm never going to do that, so I don't care. I'm just going to leave them on there. I did have to tweak this bracket a little bit. The actual bracket wasn't level. It was tweaked up, down. I can't remember, down, I think it was. So a little bit of work in the vise to tweak that up. And that's should be okay. There's plenty of room for the steering, plenty of room for suspension travel. It's quite hard to turn it when it's sitting on this rug. What we need, somewhere around here. Weight off the front wheels. Now you can turn it with one finger. There's a lot of lock on these. You can see this is one reason I wouldn't want to put cycle guards on them. There's lots of reasons for not putting the actual mounted on the wheel type cycle guards on it. One is the back plates are aluminium, and two, it adds to your unsprung weight. But the other problem would be just the clearance. So they'd have to be very tight, very close to the wheels, which is good in some ways, but not so good in others. So full lock, I mean, you've got 3 or 4 inches there before it would even hit the wheels. So even at one side completely down and one side completely up. I don't think there's any way you could easily hit those. And the other lock. Straight ahead, about there. When I take all of this apart and reassemble it, I'm going to rotate the steering wheel 45 degrees, so the spokes will be diagonal. A little bit of play there. And there's always some wobble in these. They're not very rigid at all. But vintage cars, that's what they're like. So I'm really pleased with how those front ones have come out. They more or less line up. Actually, that one seems a little off now, but they're consistent. And I think they look all right. Reasonably straight. And I think I'm probably going to finish this film now. I've still got a week and another weekend of leave. So I think the next thing will be the door skins rather than doing the rear guards. I'm going to have to do them at some point. I'm just putting it off, but I think I'd like to get the rear guards done. And I keep forgetting to try and find some metal to make the bonnet hinges. I think those look all right. On one of them, the bottom edge is actually not level, it's slightly off, but I think it's this one, but you don't really notice. It's got a bit spring to it. I still need to tidy up a little around the bottom. But yeah, they're good and solid. I was also looking at these cross braces, and most of the originals in period seem to go with just a brace directly across the front like that, which looks terrible. So it may have been the Isle of Man TT cars that had the diagonal bracing. Definitely, I think some of the original race cars did. So I think I will still go with that, just because it looks neat, and will stop the front of the guards rattling around. The other thing I could maybe do is put a little sort of gusset in there. But I'm not sure that's where the problem is. Also, none of this is bolted up particularly tight at the moment. It all needs to be done. These all look pretty neat. Yeah. I think they've come out okay.